And welcome, Patrik.
Thank you, Fredrik.
Yeah, so nice to see you. You have been a student in the course as well, and now you're a guest lecturer. So that's very interesting, isn't it?
That's an honor. Thank you so much for having me into this course and also to be in this 1 hour session about Intertek. So
Yeah.
great pleasure.
So maybe I can tell you a little bit about the backstory why you're here, and you will be able to introduce yourself properly. But Patrik, you called me. Maybe was it early spring sometime? I think after the deadline of the registration. I think so. It must have been after April the 15th. But
Then I call you likely the 16th or something.
yeah, so you called me and asked, is it possible to register for the course? And I said that, not sure, because I mean that's so many students have already applied, and then you said quickly that, I'm not interested in any credits. I already have a PhD. I'm already interested in the knowledge, and those things make me so happy. So I said that of course you should follow along, and then we talked for maybe an hour or so on the phone, and I found it so very interesting. So I asked you right away, maybe you want a guest, maybe you're up for a guest lecture as well.
Yeah, what is worth? I mean, I'm happy to share what I'm doing and perhaps why I think this is a really interesting area. And I also greatly appreciate your invitation to the course, Fredrik, and also the whole team. I mean, the TAs and all the lectures or teachers here are really great. And not speaking about all the other colleagues taking the course, I mean, you must have a patience of I don't know what. How can you survive having people like me asking questions about the most basic levels of computer science? But
yeah,
that's really why I want to go to this course. Really, it's really basic things to understand.
Yeah, but that's also the point of the course. So I mean, we should be able to learn together. So even though, I mean, your project might not end up at the same. I mean, I'm not really sure about your project, so maybe I'm talking too much. It might, but I mean, just be able to meet different levels of experience in the same place, and getting all those benefiting from each other, because there is almost no way better to learn something yourself than explain it to someone else.
I agree, and I think my learnings over my years has been that if I can learn some of the basics of any other area which I'm not normally working, it will help me a lot to understand my colleagues working in that area, but also clients and other stakeholders. So if you just know a bit of the basics, you also learn a new language, so you can communicate. So that is the driving force for me, really, to join this.
Yeah. So maybe you want to spend just a couple of words on who you are. We are going to show some slides later on, but maybe you want to, introduce yourself a little bit more properly.
Sure. I made a slide of some summary points. We can skip those as well. It doesn't matter. I think it's actually on the slide 2.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's me that is controlling the slides. So,
sure. So if you swap to another slide, and I can tell you. Oh, sorry, this slide. No, with a fellow. No, that one. Yes.
Yeah.
So my name is Patrik Stolt. I'm Swedish. As you likely hear, I have this Swinglish dialect or accent. And a bit of background. I grew up at the farm, and it took me about 40 years to understand that has been really an asset in life. I thought that was a no use of growing up at the farm. But it's really good, because then you suddenly understand another kind of business, so to say. And then I went over to engineering, and I found out that engineering is really great, but I had a really bad timing. So it was this huge crash in the real estate industry in Sweden in the late 80s, beginning of 90s. So I was kicked out, and then I thought I better combine engineering with something really different. So I went into genetics, and I took a PhD in genetics. And that's where I also started to do business, really. And I went into business. I studied at quite late at Stanford University for executive business school. But during that long journey, I started a number of companies because I think it's really inspiring to bring new technologies to life and innovation to life. So in the 1990s, DNA and genetics were something new, like IoT is really today, I would say. So you can start up a lot of new things, and you can start a lot of firms around that and ideas. And I would say more than half of those I started was a total disaster. So I can just warn you that not all of them are really good ideas. Someone else has already invented that idea, likely. And today I do some investments in artificial machine learning, IoT startups. I do some consultancy for World Bank and UN. I have headed the innovation and tech transfer unit for the southern campus of SLU, and today I'm globally responsible for a business at a company called Intertek, and I will say something about that. And I can also say the fellow to the right is actually the founder of Intertek, Thomas Edison from the light bulb. And I made another line here, Frederick. I wrote startup templates. I thought I can hear when I speak to all my fellow friends in this course, there are so many great ideas, and I can recommend you. There is a place called strategizer.com, and most of that material came from Harvard and Stanford, where they trying to develop very easy templates to use when you start up an innovation. I really recommend them. I still use them actually for various projects, even if I'm a really big firm. So if you consider bringing your ideas to life, go to that place, and they are free, so you can download them and use them. It helps yourself.
Yeah, and that's a great tip, because I think that also, I mean, what is really interesting, we talked earlier about what we were going to talk about today is that there are so many things so far in this course that have been very technology focused. We have seen IoT platforms, we have seen the LoRaWAN technology, and obviously we're talking about Python and programming and USB and all those things. It's technology. Yeah. And this I would say that this part of the puzzle where you come in now in this course is most likely something that I will try to extend in the future, that we want more, maybe put more emphasis on doing business use cases and actually finding the real value, because the technology is there and you need to understand it. That's obviously where you need to start. But I mean, a lot of people will end up have learned a lot, but they end up with like a PyCom device and a temperature sensor on their desk, and it might end up in a drawer. And then
I have one here on my desk actually. But I mean, there's such a big difference if you have technology push. It's really hard to sell something just because you have something you think could be useful. But if there is a demand, technology pull, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So if you understand your stakeholders who wants to have this service or solution, they don't even need to know how they connect your PyCom because that's the add-in value you bring into them.
Yeah.
Then it's so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really the reason. So I must say again, I'm very thankful that you have taken your time, and I also think that, I mean, please also ask questions. This might be interesting also, because I think that you have met many. I mean, you have been in workshops and been around. Yeah. So a lot of people might see
in
you
the questions section. I think I must be about top 50 at least.
That's
top 5
great.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So please, if you want to ask something, just ask away, and you will all know where to find Patrik already. So yeah.
So Fredrik, do you think we should go back one slide to see how this one, how we chopped up this hour? I mean, you are the conductors. You decide what to do or not to do. But when we discussed this, I actually asked Fredrik if I could, and I have to look in the bigger screen to read the small text. But I mean, something about the background, and I have to say something about Intertek to give you some context around this. And then we said, can we? I addressed the question about would IoT help us to prevent global starvation? I think that will be a really interesting question to address in a group like this.
Yeah.
And then this is the most unsafe area I can ever step into, connect the world. And this is an IoT area which Intertek operates in. And I don't know anything. You really realize that when you have me in the course. So if you ask too many questions there, I have to address them to a colleague somewhere. But just to give you some idea about this area. And then we have 2 sessions more if we have time. One is about the power of combining IoT and artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the next one, I took the freedom to put some thoughts around the future of computer science and IoT. And I do that from what I see and when I meet people in different environments, in research, in companies, or on university and institutes. So I thought I could share some of those if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be very interesting. So and also I really like that you have like the IoT and global starvation, because what it's really about, when I mean, if we have engineering degree programs at the university, all universities have, but what you often miss is that you're always thinking as a student, but I need to pass the next exam, and I need to thinking short term, and that's very natural, and I'm not like blaming anyone, but why are we becoming engineers? Why are we doing engineering? It's really, it might feel like it's just words, but it's not actually. We are making the world a better place, so we always need to think about that. This is for a greater good. We are making the world a better place. Otherwise, it's no idea. I mean, new technology should be making the world better, not worse.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, if we have a IoT and low-cost technologies, low data technologies, and things like that, I mean, it could create something affordable. I mean, unfortunately, we cannot be Mother Teresa, all of us. We need somehow to make some kind of money or revenue or something, because else it is not sustainable. But we can do a lot together. It's like the helium session we had. I mean, helium will be great for developing world, really, I would say. If that, they can make money, they can increase their connectivity, and they can actually benefit heavily from that.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a really interesting project as it is. So I'm so glad that they agreed also to join into the course. So we have got a lot of interesting like material in that sense.
Sure.
So, but well, you just say when I should skip a slide.
Go to the next slide. I thought of saying something about Intertek. Next one, please.
This one, yeah.
Yes, one. I have 2 slides about Intertek, just to give you an idea who we are and what we do. And I don't know, can you increase that slightly, or how does it work, Fredrik? Thank you.
Yeah.
So Intertek is likely the world's largest unknown company, I guess. Quite a big one. We are actually 48,000 employees. We are in 110 countries today, I think, and we are in 1,000 laboratories and offices globally. And as you could see, there was Thomas Edison was the founder, so it's quite an old company. We operate with 18 business lines, so we are doing anything you can think of, in anything from checking the strength of high heel shoes to pharmaceuticals to IoT devices to cars, electric cars to food. I mean, anything really. in Sweden, we are based in 3 locations. We are in Kista, where we have the electronic business line operating. So we are the owner of the S mark, which you are a bit older, you will remember the S mark you have in all electronic components. So that is Intertek who operates that. Today it's replaced with it's the CE mark, I think, for European Union. Then we are in Västerås for engineering, and then in Malmö for genetics and DNA testing. So, and I'm based in Geneva, but today I'm home based in the southernmost of Sweden. So what do? We operate in 3 industrial sectors, like products, trade, and resources. And products could be anything, like this computer mouse here. Or the trade is the trade of any goods, and resources is like wind power or minerals and things like that. It's just how you divide your industries. And that's quite important. If you want to work with an industry, you need to understand their value chains and their needs. And all this big company, we offer 4 services only. It's assurance, testing, inspection, and certification. And I will try to explain what that is. And I think if you can spend a few seconds when you hear this presentation to understand how can IoT help there, because there is great needs, enormous opportunities in this area. So if you flick to the next slide, please, Fredrik, and you just interrupt me when I sound like a salesperson, because that's not the plan.
I'm sure I will.
So now I have to look at the other screen again because the text is still too small for me. But I mean, just to give you an idea for assurance, what does it mean? It's actually to handle risks. So like risk management, or you look into regulatories or legal things. So Intertek will go to their clients and help them to do some assurance work to look at the risks they have in their business along the whole value chain, from the staff to interaction with finance to sustainability to buildings or whatever. Then we do testing, which is quite simple to understand. We test any food or we test any toys so they will not damage the kids when they play with them, or furniture will not collapse and things like that. Then we do inspections. So you can think of someone who will go to a space rocket going to Mars, or we will go there and check that what they have said has really been implemented, and we will do the inspection that is correctly done. Or it could be a pipeline of oil, or it could be anything like that. The certification, some of you may know ISO. You can read that quite often when you buy something. It's ISO certified, or it's environmental certified, or whatever. So we will do that kind of certification. We will go to firms like the Linnaeus University and certify their environments, really, that they follow the ISO 14001 or 2 for environmental certification. So what Intertek does, they safeguard some kind of expected quality and standard for the clients, but also for the stakeholders around the clients. So this is, in a nutshell, what we do. So the next one, please. Yeah, so that was a bit of Intertek. I thought I could really change topic now, because what I'm doing, I'm heading a part of a business line called Agri. And Agri is anything from biotechnology to food, to fibers you have in clothes, to the trade, to the farmers, or anything you can think of. It's huge. Actually, the farmers is the tiniest piece of the component. And I was thinking if we could have a bit of a chat, a discussion about how can IoT help that long value chain of players. And one of the big stakeholders here, which needs our help, is actually the developing world.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time in Africa or Southeast Asia, and it's you get sad when you go to those countries when you can see that people have really tough times, and they could easily get so much easier living by knowing that they have quality of water, their storage of their seeds will not get overheated, so they will not burn the food for the future bread making and things like that. So I think the IoT could actually bring loads of quality to developing world.
Yeah.
So
and before we, I mean, I actually thought about the question from like the previous slides, but talk about, I mean, you said that it was one of the largest invisible companies, like unknown companies, sort of. And this is really interesting because if you do quality and assurance and testing, wouldn't it be very like the opposite? That, I mean, the brand itself would be something that everyone knew about because it stands for quality, or what? Or is this branched out? And could you just elaborate on that? Just a thought that struck me. So
I think everyone takes something for granted a bit more. Like you buy a PICOM device and you just expect it to be working. And PICOM is not really one who flashes up all the stakeholders making it work, right? Or in checking that it will work. So you could take any brand you know about. I take a beverage company, take Coke, for instance. I mean, I think Coke's brand value reflects the beverage, and they don't want really anything else to be there than Coke, right? Yeah. But behind the scene, you have a lot of other players like Intertek or any other testing company or supply chain providers.
So let's just a follow-up question on that. So is it possible if you're a company to skip out on this like external process with Intertek and do it yourself? Would that be, is there any examples of that as well? And are they trustworthy or so to say?
So that is really great question, because I think the big reason to why companies like Intertek exist is that the third-party certification and quality control builds in some trusts. It's like auditors for financial figures. They represent actually the rest of the society. That is what they do. They will audit the books of any company to say that what they said is really true, and we are happy with that. And the same thing is that when we work with our clients, it's not that they don't want to do this. They really want to work with improvements and checks and quality control because they want to always improve themselves. But it's also very much more trustful to have someone else telling that story than yourself. So there's a double win for them. And I like to address that to my fellow friends in this course. So if you build up any kind of service connected to IoT or anything else, spend a minute and think through, what about quality? I mean, you expect something to be something. How can you certify and verify that that happens? And do you need someone else to tell that story is true? Because if you buy a humidity sensor from Frederick, and he just made it himself in the garage, and he made two of them, he never checked even if they are the same, but they work really great. The one shows 25 degrees, another one 35, but they work greatly. Yeah. And he starts to sell them. Then you have a big problem when you start to adopt those into your system. So many organizations will put standards around their business and protocols for themselves and for the clients and for the stakeholders to check that we follow those standards. Yeah, so I recommend you to give that a deep thought when you build up anything, really.
Yeah, it's very good advice. And maybe it's, I mean, said, probably not the normal student in this course is thinking about those things, but that's kind of advice that needs to be, I mean, have it in the back of your head if you're going to go further on with your idea, I guess.
Yeah, whatever you do, don't do it as a start, because you end up being depressed. So, I mean, you should do it at the end, really. You don't go to the lawyer and the bank as a start when you have an idea. You start with the idea and the vision. Then you make up the other things And I think the quality will be the same. But this is just my personal view, of course.
Yeah. There is a question here from Mohammed. Could IoT devices be used to detect resources such as water and food that otherwise might have not been detected?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, you can even use a satellite to identify where you have more humidity in the ground today. So if you want to be more precise, you can actually put out some kind of device, I guess, measuring the relative humidity in soils.
Yeah.
But you can also replant fields. Planting itself will use, of course, water, but to have bare land will make water evaporate. So if you really want to be taking care of resources of your water, if that is a problem, IoT may bring in that kind of measures, which will say, okay, this is the ideal matrix we have with covers of the soil and water usage, as an idea.
Yeah. Should we try and show the video, or we just leave it in the chat? We'll try and see.
Really up to you. The video is about 5 minutes about how it takes about 10, 15 years to get the food you have on your table developed. So you have quite a lot of time to get your business to the market. But the idea I thought was to give you an insight about a business which exists, and if you can make some difference there with IoT. And I can bring one figure here. Only in India, you have 140 million farmers, smallholder farmers. Can you make them make $1 each per year? It's $140 million more profit for them, and they can actually grow their life much better.
So we'll make a test. I'm not sure if the sound is going to work, because this is something. Let's try it. And
yeah, it worked. At least on my side. Yeah.
Okay.
You can increase it, perhaps.
Yeah.
From the moment a baby is born, that child needs food, clothing, and energy for a lifetime. All those things must be produced while saving land, water, and biodiversity. It is about doing more with less. Already, in the time you've been watching, another 200 babies have been born with the same needs. How do we meet those needs for a growing planet? One step is through the development of new plant varieties. Research is the key. Whether conventional or engineered, innovation begins with assessing needs. Scientists and breeders must understand the needs of farmers, processors, and the planet. Plant breeding has been making plants stronger for 12,000 years, including creating higher yields, improved pest and disease resistance, earlier maturity, and better quality. There are all sorts of needs plant breeding must address, including the 124 million people in 118 countries who are deficient in vitamin A and need crops with higher carotenoids, or the 106 million people affected by floods in an average year, or 900 million hectares of soil affected by salinity that require crops which can grow in those conditions. So plant breeders begin screening, looking for crop traits from existing varieties and related plants for such things as drought tolerance, disease resistance, or other traits. Hundreds of genetic resources, plant populations, wild relatives, and existing varieties must be screened to see if they have the unique quality that will help improve a crop by breeding a new variety. The genes for specific traits are often not visible or predictable on plants. For example, a tiny tomato can transfer a gene for large fruit size, or a green tomato can carry a gene for dark red color. Having identified those needed traits, plant breeders make a new variety by combining the traits with the best existing varieties. Breeders call this crossing, and it creates new varieties that better fit our human needs. That means selecting plants to have all the desirable characteristics farmers and consumers need. They must be high-yielding, easy to harvest, resist pests and diseases, and have other needed qualities like good taste, the right size, and excellent nutrition. This job can be complicated and global in scope. For example, 68 varieties and land races, coming from 18 countries, can be found in just one pedigree segment of the Sonalika wheat variety. It takes extensive work and experimentation, involving hundreds of crosses, to increase the diversity of modern crops. When the right cross is selected, it needs to be grown and regrown to make sure it reproduces with the same traits time after time. Stabilizing the performance of a new variety means that it performs in the field. For example, stem rust has been under control for over 30 years due to the widespread planting of wheat varieties with resistance. Now a new rust strain, called UG99, is spreading in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. In Kenya alone, it caused losses of up to a third of the wheat crop in 2007. So making sure new varieties can resist it in the field is essential, and can hopefully achieve decades of control to this new disease. That means testing, and lots of it. The next phase of work grows the variety in various field conditions over several years and multiple environments to test how it performs on the farm. The investment that has gone into a future variety until this point in time can be $1 to $2 million US. Only then does it move to producing. The seed sector produces the seed by growing it in fields or greenhouses under strict standards. Facing the challenges of weather, soil conditions, and all the other risks that farmers face, extra care is taken to ensure the variety remains true to its type and will be of good quality for farmers to plant. Through plant breeding, annual yield increases of 1 to 2% are achieved in many crops. Those gains allowed global food production to rise 25% between 1990 and 2000. But it is not easy. Plant breeding requires large investments in people and money. Plant breeding companies, on average, reinvest 12 to 15% of their sales on research and development. This equates to over $4 billion US per year in R&D. It also takes time, up to a decade for a variety to be developed. During those years, a baby born today will share the planet with 1.5 billion more people. Feeding them demands research and development because seed is life.
So, Fredrik, I think this is the end of the.
Yes. So
Thank you for showing that, and I'm not sure if everyone left the session today during this one.
I hope they still are on around. So
there is a reason I brought it up. The reason is that you could see that to get something which will help us in 10 years' time really has to be done today. And it's really our responsibilities, all of us here, also in the IoT course, to try to make that quicker and better. And you are actually one of the few groups with new technology coming to life. So you can make a huge difference quickly. And you can see anything from salinity, the salt levels in the soil, to testing, to replanting, to crossing, to find pathogens. All of this is quite conventionally done today. With sensors, with IoT, combined with machine learning and artificial intelligence, I think we can do much, much better.
Yeah, and I mean those things that you talk about is that I don't think there has been any time during mankind's existence that we have technology in our hands now that is as magic. Just for like 100 years ago, it would be considered magic, or even less than that,
yep.
I guess. And just like in the last 10 years, the last 5 years, we're talking about just like the last couple of years, we have seen new devices arising. And actually the things that we are using in this course, the PyCom devices, that is actually also one thing that is very new, because it's a combination of using a high-level language on a tiny device.
Yep.
So the tiny device, it existed before.
Yep.
Python existed before. But, well, now there's a combination of those two, which makes that it's much easier for anyone to go and gain access to this technology, as you are a proof of.
Yep.
And we have the same thing with machine learning. And, I mean, you can buy devices now which are spectacular for 30 euros. It's
Yeah,
almost unbelievable.
you may even measure rate of salmonella in drinking water one day with a small picum sitting there in the water supply. That would be amazing improvement, right? So I think us together can make a big change. And I like to show this short video just to give you an insight, is that we don't only need to measure the air temp or relative humidity. There is so much more out there which we could solve together with a bit of creativity.
Yeah.
Should we jump to the next one, Fredrik?
Yep.
I would try to be quite more brief here then, just to give you two more examples, and then we leave this area. I have to look at this one because this is too small, the other ones. Oh yeah, thank you. So you will see this. This is an example of a business line. This is just an illustration of the agri business line called AgriWorld in Intertek. And you can see there is a farmer in the center. We call that agri farm. That is pretty much anything we can do for the farmer, which has to do anything with teaching them, educating them, child labor inspections, anything you can think of. But downstream is more towards the right in this slide, is to the trade side, where you actually trade anything the farmer is producing. So that trade is used for food, feed, fiber, fuel, and raw materials. And you can think when you harvest something before you get it to your plate in the evening for the Saturday evening meal or something, it has to go a long chain. It has to be transported everywhere. And you have your soy beefs, which is imported from Argentina because we don't grow soybeans in Sweden, for instance. You have to trade them and move them from Argentina to Sweden. And when you do that, there is a lot of hazards, really. So in that transport, you need to keep quantity, qualities, humidity, temperatures, colors. All of these parameters is something you actually can develop devices for. And many times today, you have to take a sample and ship it away somewhere to a laboratory, for instance. Or you have to rely on your eyes when you have inspected 8 hours of trucks coming in. I promise you, your eyes is not really consistent in your measurements.
No.
So an IoT solution would be really great for that. If you look to the upstream, the farmer, the left one, which says breeding in biotech, that was pretty much what the video was about. That is 10 years down the road. So climate changes today, it takes easily 10 years to try to adopt to those if you're looking to breeding. So if you can think through how you can use IoT devices to help those breeders and seed producing companies, or it could be for meat or any other fish production, for instance, that would be an amazing improvement today.
But how did this sector, I mean, if it weren't for the agriculture sector, we would all starve. We wouldn't be as a mankind where we are today. That's totally obvious. We need to eat every day. But yeah. I mean, how big in terms of economy sized in relation to like the global economy is this sector?
So. I hope I could give you the exact figure, but I mean, if you look to the left side of the farmer, that is about $45 billion a year. So it's not huge. But if you look to the market price to the right side, where you have actually developed your French fries or your bread or whatever, that is 100 times more.
So there is a big increase in terms of the value chain when something happens when you start to make products of the crops.
So if you go to the farmer, they may get 1 to 2 crowns, so that's 10 to 20 euro cents per kilo for their wheat or the rice. But if you buy a rice brand in the supermarket, you pay like 3 euros, so I don't know what you pay actually for the rice. So it's a huge increase in value down the road. Of course, there is also huge cost increases because you have to produce something and you have to quality control it and things like that. Should we jump to the next one, Fredrik? And this is the last example I have in the agri sector, just to give you an idea and to give you some feeling about where you can actually perhaps assist and create your own ideas around this. So this is an example of the value chain of cocoa or chocolate. So we are really big in this area. We work with this industry in Intertek, and you can see there is the top line says ag, biotech, breed, farming, trade, and consumer, in the same as the previous slides. And you can see there's a chocolate bar to the right. That's the one you're going to eat Friday night, Frederick.
Yeah.
You do that every Friday, and you like that Ecuadorian flavored ones, which is 80%, of course, of Coke or something. Quite bitter, I would say. But before you get that to your table, all other things to the left has happened, really. So you can see there is far to the left someone who's trying to develop some cocoa plants or fruits. So in those cocoa fruits, these left ones, inside you have the coffee beans. And coffee beans will generate small plants which you will grow over a few months or a few years. And then you will give it to the farmers, which is the central picture here, I would say, under the tractor. And since Frederick really wants his specific brand of chocolate, and he wants to have it really well tasting, and he wants to make sure that it meets all the regulations or whatever for environment. These breeders who develop those cocoa plants, they really need to keep track on all these plants. You can see all these black bags here standing there. So you can think of devices in IoT which makes us keeping track on things. So traceability is another opportunity to certify something. How can I know that one of those black bags of cocoa plants, which they will give to a farmer in Ecuador for the region where Frederick buys his chocolate, really got the right one, and it's not full of pests and things like that. So you can think of solutions with IoT connected to that.
And I guess this is also a way of like empowering the farmers, because they would be able to actually charge extra for that kind of, if they produce something that is really good and it really not ends up in the same pile as everybody else.
This is really correct. And this is called cash crops. So you have food crops and cash crops. And cash crops is used to pay the bills for everything else which you don't eat, really. So they need certain cash crops to come in. And if they can increase their premium, they will make more money. But you can look at to the right side of that slide, Fredrik, if you take the other end of the story, you can see when they harvest that, the guys under the tractor is from Intertek. They will go to that field and check that there's no child labor, there is some usage of water is good, it's really the right brands and the right qualities. And then you have along the whole value chain onto the guys who are going there with a shovel or in the beans, checking that it's have the right moisture, it's not blended with something else. It goes to chocolate manufacturers. All these steps includes testing, inspection, paperwork, which is all the blue dots here under the pictures. So you have to merge these together. And if IoT can help us to improve that, not only in cocoa, for all the foods we are working with, I think we will create so much better qualities, but so much better transparency along the value chain.
Yeah. This is it's. I mean, this is a total new area. So just being able to look into the value chain of I mean, we all might understand that. I mean, obviously, if you eat some candy bar or chocolate, something, it's not grown in Sweden, and I can imagine that somewhere it has coming from Ethiopia or whatever. But there are so many different things happening on the chain.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. It's
I was thinking when we had the Sigfox session in the course the other day, I think I asked you, Fredrik, would I be able to put a sensor which will hook up to Sigfox wherever it comes close to that Sigfox gateway?
Yeah.
that brings suddenly a new kind of traceability to any product you move around, or a container or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think that it's actually one of the business propositions they do have. I've actually watched a Sigfox presentation time ago when they talked about exactly this case.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
So
and there are some really interesting use cases when you combine like super small sensor that sends data very, very not very often. You might only want to know if it's in that city. That might be good enough. Has the goods arrived in Amsterdam or not?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, well, then the sensor can be you don't even need a GPS. You only need to know which gateway received the signal. That's enough. So
you're all in this call sitting with the power of now making a big change, really, I think.
Yeah.
And you create the foundation for this, Fredrik, with this course, I think.
Yeah. So let's hope that, I mean, if someone starts a new business and let's just drop me an email, or Patrik an email, and would be super happy to hear.
Sure. Should we go on, Fredrik?
Yeah.
I leave this area now. I'm entering into the connected world. It's more into IoT, and this is really dangerous area for me. So I should be a bit of careful to have any kind of comments here. I just want to brief you a bit of what we are doing in Intertek on the connected world. And I have to admit that if you start to ask really deep questions, I will have no chance to answer them. So if you flick to the next one, Fredrik, please. And I have to, there is of course some kind of general video if you want to. We can post that perhaps in the or you want to watch it. It's really up to you, Fredrik. You could decide.
I'll post the link here in the chat. So
what we do is really 6 areas in the connected world, and it's another business line. So cybersecurity, product and devices, and connectivity, wireless service testing. I mean, we look to products like phones or any hardwares, really. This is what we will do. We will go through the devices and look into if they meet what they promise. But we will also do cybersecurity for networks and organizations. We may enter into one of our clients' organization and look into their global network and to see whether they are really meeting some minimum requirement regarding cybersecurity, I would say. And also how we communicate over open networks, or they do. Telecom and infrastructure. So telecom is, for me, and what I remember, this is more to the stakeholders operating the systems in telecom. So I think we have Tele2 as a speaker the other day. I cannot say whether they work with us or not, but this is a typical kind of clients where we work with them. And they use us to be their some sounding board, how they really work with their infrastructure and if they meet the minimum requirements they have for quality and standards. And then the 2 last ones is more related to the IoT. So interoperability and performance testing for the IoT. It must be myself, because this is what I do now when in the course here.
Yeah.
And I cannot say that I'm really successful, but I'm never been closer, I would say. And then there is some regulatory compliance around using IoT devices. And it's not that we will be acting as police officers or anything like that, but if you put up an infrastructure as a company using IoT, you want to make sure that you're not violating any laws, for instance. So we will do that kind of inspections.
So, for instance, if you put up an antenna or some kind of, you might want to check that, okay, this is not sending with too high gain or something. You can find examples of that. So.
Yeah. Likely not the private person, but if you are a really big or community, Kalmar county or something, they may like to know that they are meeting the laws and regulations, for instance.
Yeah.
So they want to have an external audit on that.
So you're a very big company, and of course that you are working within these sectors, but it feels like from your previous slides and from all you've been talking to, I mean, Intertek seems to be really like the perfect fit for IoT when you talk about what you do. So I mean, this should almost be like a core thing of Intertek, but
yeah, absolutely. Actually, my next slide, I think, is really about the last two slides in my next, not this one, but the next after this, I can comment this. Perhaps I can just briefly comment and give you the previous one. So I'm leaving the IoT security area because this is out of my scope. But I want to just comment on the power of combining IoT and artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is what we do today, and we can see that if I start to look and just Google around, what is the belief in the industry today, and the strong belief is that if they look to what technology will impact heavily on the society, they believe today that AI and machine learning, 41% of that is the strongest technology impacting the social society. That's really impressive. I mean, the IoT is 21%, and then you have other things like blockchains and other even less. And the answer is why do you do that? Is that 70% of this is to increase efficiency and productivity. So that's why it's adopting these technologies. And you can see also in the top right is that 38% of the investments in this technology areas goes to AI and machine learning, and at this point it was 31 to IoT. So really strong focus in this area, and I believe this will be the real thing when you combine those.
Yeah.
So the next slide, please. And I tried to make some kind of idea what we do. Just 4 slides, and then a tagline at the bottom just to say how you can actually gain ideas around this and money around this, I think. So what we do today, when we combine these two technologies, we do inspections and we use IoT, for instance, in drones where we inspect pipelines or these wind power turbines or power supplies. We inspect those as well. We have a team doing that globally. So you fly over the wings and you can look at the wing to see if there's any damage on the wings, for instance, or the pipeline, you fly over it, see if there is some leakages. But we also do it over farms or construction sites when you build up a new hospital or something. You want to know the altitude, so you move land in different directions. So in many times, I think the IoT can bring in this data transfer, but you need to combine it with some kind of intelligence, because the machine learning will bring a bit of intelligence, meaning that you can teach it, but then you have to bring in the AI to interpret the data.
Yeah.
And this is just taking off really quickly. It's so quick now, and it really changes from year to year, I would say, or even month to month.
Yeah, and we are going to, I mean, just to relate to this, is that we are also having a lecture tomorrow about tiny machine learning, which is really just what we've been talking about, that there are some really interesting tools, which is unfortunately not like in the syllabus of this course. We will have to make yet another course, I think. But
yes, of course.
maybe the next one is like both ML and the combination of these two, because these are really interlinked with each other. Especially when like just a couple of years ago, I mean, machine learning, when you worked with this, you need high-end GPUs and you need to really have a high computing power. Still, you need to train your models on a GPU or like at least a real computer. But now you can put your models on a super tiny device like the PyCom device, pre-trained, of course, but it can be there. And you all know, I mean, I'm not almost afraid of saying it, but if I say, "Hey Siri, my devices here will wake," yeah, you heard it.
Yep.
They will wake, and that's machine learning, and
yes.
it's lying there and it's operating on a battery, and it still works. So
Perhaps I can quickly mention these other 3 slides. Then I take the right one first. I think it relates to cargo and borders. And a big business of Intertek is to work with something called governmental trade services. So every country has their own custom and their own rules for trade. And under those rules, there are certain regulations which also has to do with huge risks, but also what you can import or not import, or how you tax them, or money, for instance. So on each ship, you can have up to 20,000 containers if it's not a vessel with just any dry cargo laying there, but containers. Some of those, they have really sensitive products inside for heat or temperature, humidity, pressure, damage, what you can just think of any reason you can think of, really. And then they have another aspect of it, that some products they are manufactured, let's say people will understand if I say you manufacture luxury watches in one country in Asia and you import them to UK. You don't really want to import fake ones. And when you import, you want to have the real ones, but you also want to know that that container was really secured loaded, secure transported, and secure received, and all the things inside are really what you tell them they should be. So you have to pay tax as well. So what I'm trying to say is that with a bit of thinking here in the IoT sector, you can actually bring a lot of values into this segment, which doesn't exist today. So if you have an IoT device which will sit in a container, every time it comes close to a Sigfox, whatever, sensor or gateway, it can just ping a signal, or you can have a Raspberry Pi which can tell where it has been over the last month. That would be really interesting. The last 2 ones is that what is going on is the digitalization of products and pharma. I took pharma as a specific area. So there is a company in US called TrueTag, for instance. They put new kind of hardware which is eatable to tablets, for instance. So if you think of if you can measure any kind of tablet being authentic, and you can combine that with IoT, you can actually connect something you eat with something you have electronically. Let's say that you want to put your prescription connected to your smartphone, which will be held over your tablet. It will tell you that this is the tablet you're going to have Saturday, Friday, Frederick, not the other one.
Yeah.
And you can say it's safe, really, and you can tell that someone has checked it, and you can blockchain it together. And you can actually tell the bag of tablets, which is laying in your pharmaceutical drawer, which you have home. Everyone has one of those, I guess. And you can tell that this will expire tomorrow because they are too old. You have had this drug there, Alvedone, for the last 25 years. Same tablets. So there is a lot of other information you can bring with IoTs that you can push through to the pharmaceuticals or to products information for the receiver, using, for instance, a smartphone to decode it. This happens already, I would say, so it's nothing new.
Yeah.
Is this too far out of the IoT area?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the e-health sector and the medical sector in total, I think there are so many things that you can do. I mean, when talking about elder care and all that stuff as well, and how people like measuring the health of people. We already do have. I mean, we're so used to it now, but we are carrying around our step counter, all of us already, so with our mobile phones. So sort of we're already collecting this data. But
Yeah.
one thing that I was thinking about, which I really didn't ask about earlier, but might be a good opportunity, but how to make money of your idea. And why I'm asking this is that the IoT sector is, I would say it's an immature area. You say that you showed in the last picture, 2 pictures ago, like 31% of what say the spending in investments were going to IoT and even more to ML and AI.
No.
But still, there are not that many IoT ideas that are making money. At least it should be cheap. I mean, you always think about IoT and you say that, oh, it should be very cheap and it needs to be massive. And when you're talking about LoRaWAN, I mean, that's also when the great selling point for a LoRaWAN network is that it's super cheap. The sensor super cheap. So it needs to be super massive if you're going to make some money of it. So it seems like where do you make money in IoT?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. If I knew that, I think we would have a great vacation next year. But I mean, I think I wrote at the bottom on this slide really is that my approach would be that if you just look into this sector, is to identify the needs for IoT by asking you a few questions. Where do I need to inspect something? Where do I need to trace something? Where do I need to do some quality control of something? Do I certify it, or does it need to be sustainable? If I ask those questions, then I will follow my questions by thinking, can I do this non-destructive? So think of, if we're going to take this scissor here to test that, if we have to smash that, a scissor is like €1, so that was not a good idea. But you think of any other product which is valuable. If you have to destroy it to do the testing, just that brings loads of costs. But if you have any kind of solution which is IoT and AI based, which will not destroy this, doing the same thing, then you suddenly have likely a good business case.
Yeah, and then you're not charging for the IoT itself. The IoT is maybe like something that is invisible.
It's a service. So service, this solution is a service. And the other thing I wrote down there is also that it's on site. So I don't need to send this scissor to you, Fredrik, to check it's orange and works. So you can actually do it with your IoT device on site at my home, and you would do it on demand. So when I need it, not when you think I need it, really. And you have to do it to low cost, very high accuracy, and very easy to operate. And this is where I start to think IoT has had their biggest problems in the future, in the past, to operate it. It has, I mean, it's still a nightmare. So, I mean, 90% of us in this course understands everything in computer science, but you are not the target for the business. So I think the day we need we need to convert the way how we communicate, then we will also see a better adaptation. I didn't know that I needed a smartphone 10 years ago, and I didn't know that what an app was. But now I know it, and I somehow need my phone. I don't know why, but still, it's still there.
Yeah, and we might see the same thing with IoT, but also, I mean, that is why one of the reasons why I really myself love being in this particular area is that there are no like clear path ahead. It's many unknowns, and I mean the technology is there, but there are still so much to explore.
Yeah,
and that's super interesting. So.
I'm thinking of when we discussed humidity in buildings somewhere. We had that carbon dioxide in buildings. I'm just amazed that no one is doing that for farmers. Can you imagine all the stables with cows and pigs and chickens or whatever? I mean, it's a huge market.
Yeah.
Anything, you can put your humidity sensor in your hamster cage if you want to know if you have to change for the hamster or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just to be a bit creative, I think.
Yeah. So great. We are actually already over time.
Oh, so sure.
I think we'll. You had some like you wanted to leave some thoughts for the mind, or so to say.
Yeah, I can do this extremely brief then. So I thought I took the risk to be a bit philosophic and what is going on. And these are really going on, many things. So if you can spare 2 minutes, I will share these things with you. So next one, please. So the question which were addressed when I went to university and I met my colleagues everywhere globally is that, computer science is quite interesting. It's based on a binary code, ones and zeros, more or less. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
And actually, it's less than 100-year-old used in computer science. Then people start to measure this to other systems which exist, and one is the genetic code. It builds on quadruple code, really, ATGC. Just that makes it much more flexible. But the other thing is that it's more than 200 million years old, so it's quite a robust system, I would say. So the question I want to address to you in your thoughts, and when you work with this in the future, do we really work with the right system? That's really interesting to see. And many people already say that we are not doing that, and they start to convert. And if you flick to the next one, I will show you what is going on. So I just read that IDC says that in 2025, you have about 175 zettabytes of data. That is the global aggregated volume of computer data. That will last for about stacking DVDs 2 times around Earth. And currently it will take 1.8 billion years to download with their existing systems, really. So a lot of data, so which we put a lot of storage around. So if you flick to the next one, what they now do is that they start to make biological computers. So 1 gram of DNA, everyone has DNA in its cells. You got it from your parents, really, so be grateful. It holds up 455 hexabytes of data, each gram. And we need about 384 grams of DNA to host the whole global computer data. That is about what we have together in this course. So if you take all the cells in this course, we can host the global data information. So they are now trying to build a biological computer. So if you flick to the next one, Frederick, that actually ends up that they are now trying to build like a biological USB. So wouldn't it be great to have your own potato back home as a USB stick in the future? And you think you are laughing, but it's ongoing. Yeah. Not in a potato, but the other interesting thing is that you're now trying to mimic sensors as well from the bioscience part. So you can mimic the plants or organisms' way of sense and smell and taste and feel and do photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing which is going on is that they are trying now to build up biological LoRaWAN networks, because it's really known that if you touch a plant in one of those rows, it may end up in the other end of the row within an hour later. So everyone knows in that row that something happened. For instance, a pathogen is coming. And they are trying now to build up slow communication networks using biological networks instead. So you may have your own Kiwi gateway back home in 10 years' time. Who knows? So the last one, I think we can skip that one. Yeah, we can jump over this one. So I would just end to say it's better to be approximately right than exactly wrong. So thank you so much for taking this time.
Yeah, it went so fast during the last slides here. So I know that we're trying to keep our time. So,
sure.
But it's so interesting, and I mean, just by the fact that you started about the computer science is all about bits. So we have ones and zeros. That's all it's about. And what you're seeing here now, it's based on that technology. But isn't it also fantastic that we can all do all these fantastic things with just like the binary?
Yes, it's amazing, and it's not really a good system, if I should be honest.
No, but it still works. So I mean, and also. So I mean, what you're showing here would be like a new paradigm shift of doing things, but we still would probably still need a high level programming language. We would probably still code on in Python or whatever. So
I agree. I mean, it will be a shift, and I mean, we still use a wheel in mankind, but it's not so much in the nature using a wheel. Really, they actually use these other kind of movements instead than a wheel.
Yeah.
So, but there will be change. It's going on. It's not made up as a fun thing. It's really serious changes going on.
Yeah, that's the only constant. The change.
That's good. Really good.
Yeah. So it's an amazing time to be alive, and that's for sure.
Yeah, and I really want to stress to my colleagues in this course, try to combine your skills in computer science with something else. It's not that it's bad or good or bad. It's just give you a broader angle of the opportunities.
Yeah, and also if you're not from computer science, you're already combining what you already know with computer science as you are taking this course.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, in that case, I think we should. There seems to be a lot of thank yous, and you'll be able to read them yourself in the
Sure.
Discord channel.
Reach out if there is any question. Do not hesitate to let me know if I can answer anything.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that you took your time to be a part of the course, and we'll see if we follow this up next year. That actually might be something that we can follow up during next year and look at what was the result from last year, maybe at Intertek. So
sure, absolutely. I can bring up one thing which came out of this, perhaps.
Yeah, that would be super nice. Yeah. So stay put, Patrik. I will end the stream. So Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you. Bye.